People who had to live with hoarders. What was the most disgusting thing that you saw in their home? A dead dog that had been there so long it was mummified. Uncle of mine is a hoarder and routinely goes dumpster diving for food. He delights in gifting his finds to people who have no idea where the food came from. One year he came home with an entire box of chicken that had spoiled. It was like 3x3 FD. Big box. Anyway, he put it on the front lawn to take care of it later, and it snowed that night. That shit sat there all winter and caused a noticeable mound. None of his neighbors knew what it was. In the spring, when all the snow melted, it has become a rat's nest, and by then all the neighbors had noticed and complained about a sudden rat problem. Was so horrible. Stepdad is a hoarder. 5 being the worst, he's probably a 2 at most. So nothing as bad as the TV show. But that shit still fucks you up when you have to grow up in it. Grossest stuff involved our food. My sister was eating Rice Krispies when we noticed brown moth larvae in it. We learned moth larvae looks a lot like Rice Krispies. Another time was pouring syrup on pancakes. A flood of tiny dead ants came out. To this day, my sister and I get extreme anxiety from clutter or bugs in the house. I keep syrup in the fridge and many foods in tight containers. It's not something you can just get over. I spent part of my summer break helping my hoarder aunt clean out her apartment after an initial 2-day cleaning by a crew. Once I made it to her bedroom, I started finding cat supplies from her cat who died 10 years past. I looked over at her dresser and there was a box of cat food on it and noticed the top of her dresser was moving. It had a glass top to it, and under the glass was a full layer of mealworms. And that's the last day I cleaned for her dog. Probably the piles of dog and cat shit growing mold in the living room, or watching their infant eat Cheerios and crawl on a dark gray floor that was originally off-white. Maybe the pile of used puppy pads in their bedroom, or the maggot-filled baby bottles. It was all pretty horrifying. My uncle collected dead mice in his freezer. Bloody bandages taped from dialysis. Expired food. Sticks and leaves. Literally anything thrown away or on the side of the road. Moved him out of my place and into the home of a previous hoarder. May he build his trash heap until he inevitably burns the place down. This friend had a slow cooker behind the toilet in the restroom, next to a huge pile of used toilet paper. He needed help in the house. The only time I was ever allowed inside. I was like, WTF. He didn't know I saw that through all the pile of shit he had all over the house. It was just something that would never cross my mind. Put the slow cooker behind the toilet. A couple of days later, he told me he pulled out the cooker and made his famous chili, and wanted to bring me some as a thank you for helping that day. Glad I told him I was out of town for the week. One of my current roommates ended up getting cancer when I first moved in. He regularly got food from churches and other places until our fridge got full. When asked to clean it out, he hoarded it all in his car. Mind you, this stuff was already months, and months, if not longer, since I moved in, already there. He slowly started putting it back in the fridge until we complained. Don't know where it is now, but it's definitely not the trash. He still has the same bread up on top of the fridge that's been there since the day I moved in. It is a running joke how stale this bread is with no mold on it. Lol. I grew up in an extreme hoarder home until I moved out at 18. We couldn't afford trash service, and my mom felt too bad or was too embarrassed to use dumpsters that weren't ours, so trash bags stacked up to a literal 4-5 foot pile in our kitchen. The most disgusting part was I would routinely wake up with dead gnats bugs in my mouth. When my mom got cancer and started chemo, I took a week off work and spent 8 hours every day cleaning her house and throwing shit away. It still took her another year after that to go through enough stuff that she could sell her house and move on, but she is doing much better now and no longer hoarding. I'm very proud of her. Not lived with, but back when I was a volunteer for the elderly, the worst was a lady that was hoarding poop in plastic packets. There was tons of other stuff that kinda made sense, like piles of fabric. There used to be a fashion designer and furniture stacked to the ceiling, but white poop. I see a lot of hoarded houses. The worst was a foot of standing water in the basement that they claimed they didn't know about. There was enough black mold all over the house to suggest it had been there for quite a while. The main floor was covered in dog piss and feces, smelled like a dead animal, because they couldn't afford trash service, so it was just in bags everywhere rotting away, evidence of drug use all over. We bought it and abated the entire house. Neighbors loved it. Edit. I've never seen so many rats, literally a horde or rats. My sister was a hoarder, but with only one thing. She was bulimic, so I know her mental state was not the best, and I do not shame her. We used to share a room and I never went on her side of the room until we were having a fruit fly problem. I couldn't figure out what was attracting them, so I started to look around. Come to find bags upon bags of throw up. She would throw up in a bag and tie it shut and then add more bags so it didn't leak. These were grocery store bags. Worst part was I had to clean it all up because my mom said so. She's better with the bulimia but not her mental state. My dad was a hoarder. He had this weird obsession about receipts, and had to keep every single one. He insisted if you don't have the receipt, you don't own the thing and the government can just come take it. The receipts lived in a pile on the kitchen counter next to the sink. Also included in the pile was any and all mail that came, junk or not, mostly unopened. The thing is, that sink sprayed. The pile of paper constantly got wet, sometimes with dirty dishwater. A few times a spilled beer soaked the pile. It always kept growing until it was taking up a good 5 feet wide of counter space, a few feet high, paper wedged right up under the cabinets. A good 14 of the kitchen counter space was taken up. Eventually I decided to get rid of it all when no one was home. It had become a mold lasagna. The bottom few feet were nothing but a mass of mold and sludge with an outer shell of vaguely dry paper. I hauled the dumpster inside the house and used a shovel to get it all in. Of course my dad was pissed and insisted there were important legal documents in there. I didn't live there, but was called to do electrical work there. All I will say is that I thought it was so bad, I am surprised the roaches didn't throw the guy out. Bugs on rusty bed sheets they've been collecting for the last 40 years. I haven't lived with a hoarder, but recently a few months back I helped a friend whose friend was in the hospital due to almost dying from alcoholism. And before he could go back home he had to do major cleaning of his house, because an inspector was going to condemn it. It was bad. Other than the kitchen area, no bugs or anything, or at least we didn't see, but liquor bottles, beer bottles everywhere, and the dude was a freak. Porn everywhere. I found bondage masks, whips, sex toys. The guy did photography part-time and it was all like amateur pornish, but it was bad. My dad is a yard sale hoarder, so not rotting garbage and decade-old newspaper. If something is on the side of the road for free, he's taking it. We can't take him with us to the dump, because he always finds something that's perfectly good, and tries to take it home. We did find a live turtle in the sump pump in the basement about a month ago, no idea how it got in the house. He's chilling in one of the many aquariums, because it's too cold to release him outside. My grandma started hoarding when she got older. Her thing was storing half-eaten chicken legs under her mattress and half-eaten apples stored in bowls throughout the house. My uncle had her placed in a care facility when he discovered this. Thankfully, my grandma's hoarding didn't reach truly disgusting levels like on the TV show Hoarders. However, the smell and the various states of food decay were unpleasant. 3 cats and 3 ferrets and animal shit everywhere, in hidden piles out of sight behind cabinets and underneath couches, etc. The house reeks. Why do people take on the responsibility of having so many pets that they don't even want to take care of? It's so sad.